Hello again, ladies, gentlemen, those just emerging from your tryptophan-induced coma. This is the Saints Insider Podcast. It's Black Friday, November the 29th. I'm Zach Ewing with Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris.
I'm still in my coma.
That was a realistic yawn there.
No, that's because it was real.
Happy Thanksgiving. Hope everybody had a great holiday. You're enjoying a good holiday weekend. We are here to preview Saints versus Rams. Jeff Duncan's not here. No truth to the rumor that he's in a gravy-induced coma.
No truth to it?
Well, he texted. I suppose that could have been a scheduled text of his prediction because it's just the same thing he always predicts. So maybe he is.
Saints by 1.
No spoilers. Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. All right, Saints have been off for a week, guys. They're back in action. It feels like it's been a long time since they played. There's been so much football on TV and stuff since the Saints have actually played. But here they are. I mean, this is it for the rest of the year. Like, if you win this game, then you're legitimately in it. You're on the TV graphics that say you're in the hunt. You have a viable path, still unlikely, but viable path forward. If you lose, it's time to start talking coaching search and who's going to be back. And, you're really looking at a dead last month of the year.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest. Darren Rizzi has been really good his first 2 games, but I think this is the one that's really going to kind of shape up which direction this team is going.
They're really, really focused on this game.
Rams want to know.
Rams want to know. I like it. You can tell when there's like a mantra inside the building because you just hear people repeating it and they're not like saying it to your face like this is what our mantra is, but like 4 or 5 different people have just like dropped Rams want to know this week.
It's like the Mockingjay. Just hear it echo.
Yeah, exactly. So that's clearly a heavy point of emphasis. They are not even entertaining ideas about. I think Clint Kubiak was asked, like, do you feel like you need to, show that you're worthy to come back? He's like, Rams want to know. I was asking people about their favorite Thanksgiving sides, and somebody said Rams want to know. So like, I mean, some of that is jokey, but like, it's really, it really is. I think a point of emphasis. They are locked in and focused on this week and this week alone. In winning this games, I think they understand how important it is to the rest of their season, even if they're making sure to not look beyond this one. So I think that's a healthy mindset to be in right now for this team.
I think Dennis Allen. I'm actually going to mention Dennis Allen, but I think what Riz is doing. I mean, we didn't see that with Dennis Allen. Like I don't ever remember and maybe I'm just overlooking it, but I don't remember a team being this locked in and having every week is always like little things like that that it's something that Rizzi emphasized. And I just think that's I think it's kind of unique to his coaching style and what he's kind of brought to this team.
Yeah, man, I think we're going to find out here after the bye. After you got a couple of wins against a Falcons team that's not playing very well, and then a Browns team that's just not very good. We're going to find out how much this shtick works for Rizzi. Like, can you focus the team in like that every single week? And if he can prove that he can, then that advances the discussion about whether he's the guy permanently.
Yeah, and considering the opponent, I mean, this is the team that outside Detroit maybe gave them the most problems last year. This is I know that under Dennis Allen they've beaten the Rams before. I think it's first season, right? But this still seems kind of like a bad matchup for them in terms of all the motion, all the stuff they struggle with. So if he can get them focused and locked in and pay attention to those details, that was a thing that, if you look back at last year's game, that was kind of the thing that crumbled them was that, Alante Taylor has talked a lot about like his eyes not being in the right place. Isaac Yadam, who's not here anymore, kind of struggled with the same thing. It was those attention to details, the offense stalling out past midfield. They had opportunities to kind of come back or win that game, and they let it go. And I think if under Rizzi, if that's going to be different, he's got to hammer those things this week.
Well, look, and this is, I think, one thing that the Saints kind of consistently failed to do in the Dennis Allen era is they would beat the teams they were supposed to beat a lot of times. Right? They would beat the Panthers and the Falcons when they had Desmond Ridder at quarterback and whatnot. But like whenever they stepped up in class and played like a playoff contender, a Super Bowl contender, they'd often lose those games. So I think this is where Rizzi can say he separates himself. Is if he can get this team where a lot of people probably doubt the Saints in this game for good reasons, for stuff that we're going to talk about in this. But if he can get them up to beating a class above them, I think that's a mark in his in his box there.
That's a great point. But I would also say that the Rams being 5-6, they could be vulnerable right now too. Like, we'll see how they respond after a pretty bad loss against Philadelphia. But you could be catching this team at the right time, and I think that's even maybe a more rallying point for Rizzi, because it really seems like he knows how to tune into what this team, like how to motivate this team.
All right, so we're going to begin our breakdown. Got to take a break first. We'll be back right after these messages.
Ooh, I see at least 3 of them in there.
3 what?
Possums, big rats, I don't know.
Clarify big.
You're gonna have to gut it.
How much is that gonna cost? Maybe I should just move.
Maybe.
Is that your van?
Hi, strawberry mango. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Thank you. I'll take another one.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
Okay, so beginning our Rams-Saints breakdown game is at 3:05 on Sunday. It's a late window game, which we just love on Deadline. They're so much fun.
Zach's lying. Zach's
Yeah,
lying to you.
they're the worst, man. Seriously, I'd rather have a primetime game. Just inside baseball thing, but it's like the game. It's so much later when the game is than you think it is. But it's a 3:05 game. It's on Fox. The betting line is Rams by 2.5. Actually, it's 3, I think now, which feels right. 49.5 over under. Matt, you were saying before it's a 5-6 team. There's 2 things about that. Number one, this is the team, again, we talked about directly ahead of you in the standings. If you can win this game, the Saints are then tied with the Rams, obviously would have the tiebreaker over them. Huge step as you try to climb every rung in that ladder for the playoff race. But 2, this was a team I think that was 1-4 and has now won 4 of its last 6. They had won 4 out of 5 before losing Sunday night to Philly. So I don't know, like they're a road favorite. They're only 5-6, but this is a better team than their record.
It is. I mean, they're healthy now. They went the first 5 games. I don't know how many Cooper Kupp off the top of my head played or Puka Nacua, but and their offensive line was decimated. Like,
Yeah, they actually had a worse offensive line situation.
Oh,
the
so
Saints
that
did.
Cardinals game?
Yeah, they were down like I think all 5 starters right, for multiple games.
and if you think about what Sean McVay's teams do well, it's the offense. So, getting those bodies back, I think Matt Stafford there's an argument to be made that he's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. If it's not 5, then he's in the 7 rank. Like, I don't see him any lower than 7. Like, he's a very good quarterback. This is a good team. And I guess the reason why I thought maybe they were vulnerable a little bit is just because of the way that the Eagles attacked them. Saquon Barkley having the game that he did. Maybe Alvin Kamara, they try and use him the same way and see if they can generate some things on the ground, as the Saints like to do. But they had been, before the Eagles game, in a bit of a groove. And so we'll see how they can bounce back. But I think that Rams team is really good, and the NFC West is wide open. But if you told me the Rams won the NFC West, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
No,
Yeah.
I do think they're much better than their record.
Yes.
Best quarterback they've faced this year, I think, without a doubt.
Mahomes. But
Well,
are you saying?
okay, yeah.
Dak Prescott's in that conversation too.
Yeah. I think Stafford is better than Dak. I'm sorry.
No, I'm
Mississippi State, man.
No, I'm with you.
No, he's not. He's not better than Mahomes.
You're the Stark villain now.
Although Mahomes says, Mahomes has really not played up to the Mahomesian levels this year. I think probably the best collection of skill players they've faced this year. Remember Demarcus Robinson killed him last year. So did Puka Nacua. I don't think they had Cooper Kupp for that game last year. Kyron Williams is really good. I think Higbee's a good tight end. I think this is a really dangerous team, especially for a Saints team that's really struggled defensively this year.
It's really easy to see, Rod. This is the third straight year the Saints have played the Rams, and they actually play them again next year because they get the NFC West next year. So Saints are familiar with this team. The Saints fans are familiar. It's real easy to kind of examine the script where the Rams win or to make it up.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of saw the script last year. I think they were up 30-10 or something at one point. It was like the Rams were up really big last year, and the Saints kind of made it closer than it actually was, but it wasn't really a close game. I just think the Rams, you look at their schedule, I mean, they played some really good teams. They got a win over the Vikings. They got a win at Seattle. So, I mean, they've done some things this year that I think their record is a little deceptive too. Yeah.
Can we pause for some breaking news here?
Let's do it.
Matt Eberflus is out in Chicago.
Oh, didn't he give a press conference this morning?
That's so funny.
As the coach, and then then they fired him.
He was confident that he was going to be.
Yeah, he was confident he was going to coach against 49ers.
Wow.
Joke.
I mean, look, that was just a nightmare scenario at the end of that game. You cannot. Like he had to know.
Even Dennis Allen is impressed how they do that game.
He had to know at the end of that game that he wasn't going to be the coach next year, but weird to make him go out and do the press conference.
Very odd timing.
And answer questions about his job status.
Three job openings
That's
now?
three now. Chicago, Jets, Saints. With Jaguars, you'd think. Maybe Cowboys. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
Giants. There's some other possibilities out there.
Yeah.
Talk about a team that's talked themselves into making a late season run. The Cowboys here now at 5-7. That's
They're ahead of the
same-
Saints right now.
same position as the Saints. The table's open.
Well, that could be our transaction segment. It's proudly sponsored by Associated Grocers. Join our team and help support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. Not talking directly to Matt Eberflus, but it's out there. What I was planning for our transaction segment is Chris Olave was back watching Saints practice today, or this week.
Tuesday.
We still don't.
Wednesday?
Can't come back from IR for two more weeks anyway. So he's certainly not going to be back or anything. Do you guys think is he progressing? It feels like if the Saints are still in it, he's progressing toward possibly playing again this year.
I mean, I just don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I think he has seen a bunch of different specialists, and that's all we've gotten word about is that he's seen a bunch of people. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I think Rizzi said he was in a good place.
He was in the locker room the other day.
He left everything open ended, but like I just don't know. Like even if they beat the Rams and then beat the Giants, and they're 6-7. I don't know. It's a really tricky one.
Yeah, I don't think you bring him just to fight for a playoff spot. I mean, he could probably help you, but I just don't know if it's. I don't think it's even worth it at this point in his career. I mean, I think you just shut it down, come back next year. But I mean, like Luke said, we don't
know the
have
details.
any answer.
We don't know the medical details of what head specialists are telling him. Like, hey, this is a high recurrence of re-injury, a low recurrence. I mean, we have no idea. So it's just hard.
Remember, I mean, Derek Carr also suffered 2 concussions last year, and he didn't miss any games. So. I mean, let's just say I think it's everything's a case by case basis. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, it's okay. I would just say he was in the locker room the other day when you guys were out interviewing Joe Woods and the coordinators, and he seemed like in a really good place. He was interacting with teammates, smiling. Like, I know that doesn't mean hey, I'm ready to go suit up on Sundays, but at least from a human standpoint, it was good to see him.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing.
It seemed like he was in good spirits.
It reminds me a little bit of the Tua situation. I mean, it did obviously for everybody to begin with, but they almost immediately Well, the Saints didn't immediately put him on IR like the Dolphins did with Tua, but they immediately were like, hey, he's not going to play for a while. We need to figure this out. And that was, after a few weeks, it almost seemed like that was more of a precaution, like, hey, we need time. He needs time to see how his body reacts, to see how his head reacts. And maybe he doesn't even need all that time, but we're going to give it to him. So we'll see what happens when the 4 weeks are up.
No, I mean, I think it's even possible, even if they're out of it, that Chris just wants to play.
Yeah.
Could be.
So, I think it's definitely possible we see him again this season. I just don't know if I'm going to go out on a limb and say likely, because we just don't know. We don't have that much information yet.
All right, other injuries. Erik McCoy still missing practice. Lucas Patrick is missing practice. It's Friday morning. We haven't seen them practice on Friday. It'd be a bad sign if they missed again today, though.
Yeah, I mean, Lucas Patrick, I'm just like fully not expecting to play. How many games was this for him?
This will be his third straight.
This will be third straight. McCoy, I don't know. I still think there's a chance. Rizzi sounded not necessarily optimistic, but like they were taking it day by day. So maybe we'll go out there and see him at practice today. Obviously, they took yesterday, Thanksgiving, off. So maybe they just wanted to give him the extra day rest, let him fuel up, carb load yesterday. Get his body ready.
It's interesting. Well, that reminds me of the story you wrote last year. Erik McCoy can do some carb loading.
Oh, yeah, he can.
Yeah, no doubt, more than the rest of us. But it's 2 DNPs are usually not a good sign, but this is a weird week because they have Thursday off, so the 2 DNPs are earlier in the week. And we'll see what he does Friday, but that's a big deal for the Saints. And Saints fans, Associated Grocers is hiring. If you're looking to join a team dedicated to supporting independent retail grocers, apply today. Your future starts here. And that's a good place with Erik McCoy, Rod, to kind of break us into our breakdown here. When the Saints have the ball, man, they're a lot better with that guy out there. I know one offensive lineman is not supposed to matter that much, but just looking at the evidence, he matters a lot.
Yeah, not to give any spoilers on my picks, but his status affected my decision. We're going to probably talk about how much the Saints need to run the ball, and it's pretty evident they run the ball better when he's out there. They pass protect better when he's out there, and if you don't have that, it kind of limits some of the things you can do offensively, and you get behind the chains and all the bad things that this offense doesn't need to happen. So, a bit concerned if he can't play.
Yeah, guys, and the Rams defense, we saw Philly shred them for 250 rushing yards, or whatever it was on Sunday night. They also are second.
That was just
Saquon. Yeah, I guess it was more than that. That's not even Hurts or Gainwell or any of those guys. The other thing is they're second worst in the NFL, 8.2 yards per attempt allowed. So you can really the one thing they do well is they rush the passer.
Wow, you're like stealing all my notes here.
Oh, well, you've got the notes though. Jared versus is it Brandon Fisk? Braden Fisk. The 2 rookies have been real good, even without Aaron Donald. Like they can get after the passer.
Yeah, and that's why I think to me, like if I'm looking at this for the Saints offense, like I think they need to mix it up because LA is gettable on the ground, they're gettable through the air, but like if you become one dimensional, that's where things can start to hurt you. So, like, I think, sure, like, it'd be great if they went out there and ran for, 200 yards against them and controlled the clock and controlled the game with the ground game. But I do think that you can get this team through the air. You could see them have some of this similar sort of success that they've had when the offenses looked really good this year, where they run the ball well and then they base everything else off of that. But I do think that they can't go into this game with a one-dimensional attack or with only one of those things working because, I think you can. They're like bottom 10 in EPA per play against both the run and the pass. Like you can hit some big plays against this team.
I don't want to boil it down to as simple as can the Saints protect Derek Carr, but based on what you said, and then Matt also, just Derek Carr is not. He's throughout his career. That's where he struggles is when you can get after him. To me, it's a huge key. You got to have those quick hitters. You got to have people back there protecting him. I mean, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would generally say he's done a great job with that this season. He's only been sacked 7 times. He's been under pressure, but depending on how much you want to read into Pro Football Focus grades, like their pass protection ranks worst in the NFL, according to that service, but yet the passing offense ranks still, I think it was like 11 or so, maybe top 10. And I think a lot of that has to do with Card because he's able to manage the game effectively and get out of tricky situations. But we kind of all have that visual of like when the pocket starts to collapse and Carr's kind of like scrambling and you just know it's going to be like an ugly throw. And that's the situations they have to avoid. But I'm really interested to see how Jared Verse does. I mean, this was a guy that the Saints, I think, took a long look at. It made sense to go with Fuaga, but he's a guy who's having a really good season.
Yeah, he's the favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year right now.
He would have definitely been a Saint if they had literally any confidence in anything going on at tackle.
Didn't have this glaring 4-alarm fire.
Jared Verse
looked
like I mean, he literally looks like he was built in a lab to be a Saints defensive end. Which, like, maybe if he got here, he wouldn't be having the year he's having right now because they just haven't been able to get anything out of those guys. But, like, any other year where they were picking, number 13, 14 this 14, year, yeah. And Jared Verse is on the board, they would have been like, hell yeah, that's our guy. We've been identifying him for years. Like he was like the Captain America meme where the fog lifts out of the machine and the hand comes up. It's like Jared Verse, Saints. This is our guy.
If and when he lines up over Fuaga, that's a fascinating one-on-one matchup just from a draft perspective to see.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, obviously we'll see on Sunday, but I think that's probably the type of player that Fuaga fares better against because I mean Verse is a really good athlete, but he's it's like the kind of diverse skill set that he brings, and a lot of it is strength, and play strength is like off the charts for Fuaga. He's such a strong player. He gets you like into his hands and like kind of plays over. It's a speed guys that he really has trouble with. So I think it's a pretty good matchup for him, but who knows? Like Verse could just whip him on Sunday and I'll look like an idiot.
Just 2 weeks ago, Rod, we saw Taysom Hill just go off, have the best game of his career. His usage rate was way up, all that sort of stuff. Does this feel like another spot for that to maybe kind of soften up that defense and set up the pass to you?
You should have went to Luke first on this one.
I usually do. I try to mix it up.
No, I think so. I mean, it'd be hard not to try to use Taysom after what we saw the last time he played. So I think they'll try it. I mean, they saw what Saquon did. They saw this team. You can run against this team. But again, I think it goes a lot back to, not having Erik McCoy as well. So I think that kind of makes it a little more difficult, but I think they'll definitely try it. And, I think we'll see a heavy dosage of Taysom in the first, to start the game. And if it's working, they'll keep doing it.
Because that's a way to counteract that pass rush is to play Taysom in the short game and kind of get him out there in space or just let him bull up the middle and have those guys try to tackle him.
Yeah. I stay out of bad third down situations. Don't let those guys just like tee off. And that's like Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara and getting yourself into 2nd and 6 and 3rd and 3. And then base everything off of that. That's why they were so good the first couple of weeks of the year. They had like 1 3rd and long those first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
My bad. This feels like it could be a heavy play action game for the Saints.
For sure.
Given everything
should be.
We talked about with the Rams giving up almost 9 yards per carry, or 9 yards through the air. Their problems on the run game. Like if you can stay balanced and really tap into that, I think
we got another 40+ yard touchdown for MBS this week.
I think the matchup is going to be
39.
Can they protect? Okay, so all in all, I think a pretty favorable matchup for the Saints offense, especially if McCoy can play. That's obviously a key. Flipping things over to when the Rams have the ball, though, this is where you talk about trying to keep your offense balanced. When I think of balanced offenses around the league, the Rams are what I think of. I mean, Kyron Williams is a good back. They can run the ball on you, and then if they do decide to pass, they've got Stafford, and they've got this stable of receivers. And, Rod, it's just hard to imagine the Saints secondary as it's constructed. I mean, even last year when it was a strength of this team, they had trouble without Cooper Kupp against the Rams. Now it's Kupp, it's Puka Nacua, it's Demarcus Robinson, it's Tyler Higbee. Looks like he may be coming back. I mean, it doesn't feel like the Saints can cover those guys.
Yeah, you look at, I think the Saints are next to the last in the league in like yards allowed, like 390. They're getting up over 400 yards the past 2 games. That was Jameson with Kirk Cousins. I just think this is a recipe for disaster for the Saints secondary. With Marshawn's no longer here, Debo's obviously out for the year. I just think this is they struggled with these receivers last year, and the Saints secondary is not as good as it was last year. And I mean, other teams have torched them, so I can see that happening again this week. A lot of explosives. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rams, popping off a lot of big plays.
What can you change that could help you out? Do you blitz more? I mean, do you try to get after Stafford? Do you and just take your chances?
Quarterback?
What do you do?
I just think Stafford can hurt you in the only way he's not going to hurt you is as a runner. But if you send blitzes, he's going to kill you on the blitz. He's going to replace the blitz and throw behind it. If you just try to send 4 and drop back in coverage, he's going to dice you up. I think the only way for them to limit that is to play really sound, fundamental, disciplined football.
Or have Chase Young get 6 sacks and put Rod's prediction back on track.
Yeah, might need 7. Might need 7. Yeah, you know what I'm saying though. It's that to me is when LA has the ball, we've got to see a much more disciplined version of the Saints defense than we saw last year, and certainly that we've seen all year this year. You got to get Puka Nacua down on the ground after he makes a catch, and you can't let him go for 30 more yards. You got to have 11 guys rallying to the ball on Kyron Williams. You got to not get lost in all these crossers and motions and all this other stuff that they do. They run a fairly simple offensive attack with a bunch of window dressing that makes it look really complex. It's basically what the Saints do. And maybe there's an element of that. The Saints have been going up against their own offense all year. They're a little bit more prepared for it, maybe. But I mean, that's where it's got to be, because if you start trying to manufacture some way to cover up your warts, I think Stafford's just too good, and he's gonna figure it out and kill you.
Well, speaking of window dressing and eyes in the right place, it brings us to Alontae Taylor. And Matt wrote a really good story published on NOLA.com this morning about Alontae Taylor, and we kind of chose this week to pursue that story because this was the game last year, the Thursday night game right before Christmas, where Taylor gets benched. He was probably, now I don't think anybody in the secondary played very well in that game, but Taylor was kind of the poster boy for that because he did get benched and he was in the slot and he was getting lost. And I mean, it was just ugly. I mean, it looked like the Rams could do whatever they wanted. So now he's back, Matt, as this team's lead corner this week. What did he say, and how does he think things may be different?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting in that Rizzi kind of went to bat for Alontae Taylor in his press conference, said that basically it wasn't as bad as everyone made it seem, that there were a few bad plays, but maybe it got a little bit too much notoriety. And then when I asked Alontae Taylor about that, it was, I appreciate coach, but I let my team down. And he really he said he put the defense in bad positions, mentioned the poor eyes, the open field tackling, the angles weren't right. So I do think he's very aware of how he has to be better, but at the same time, some of the things that he struggled with from the slot, he's not going to be tasked with dealing with on the outside. But what made kind of writing the story a little bit more complicated is that it's just because he's on the outside, it doesn't necessarily mean he's played better. He's actually really struggled the last 2 weeks, and he's given up 4 touchdowns this season. 3 of them have been for at least 30 yards, including 2 against the Browns, which were for 89 and 30 yards.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was on the Jerry Jeudy one, right?
Yeah, he was.
And I guess the Elijah Moore one. Mm-hmm. And then the week before against Atlanta, there was the one of Darnell Mooney down the sideline where he had a chance to make a play on the ball and just, I think, mistimed his jump.
Yeah, it wasn't a touchdown. But then in the Chargers game, too, he had a 60-yard touchdown to Olave McConkey. That was from the slot, but still, teams have kind of gone after him, especially on the outside the last 2 weeks. The last 3 weeks, because Marshawn didn't play the Panthers game. I think it's 27 targets.
Wow.
Over 3 games, so he's seeing heavy volume. Some games are better than others. The Falcons game was particularly rough, but yeah, I think the Rams are going to target him for sure.
Yeah, and they'll Kool-Aid's on the other side. I mean, he's played okay, but he's a rookie. I mean, you've got these matchup advantages for the Rams everywhere. So I'll answer my own question. The way you fix it, the way you prevent it, is you win up front. And that if the Rams' offense has struggled, that's where it's been. But the Saints' defensive front struggled, Rod.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it all season long. They haven't been able to put much, putting some pressure, but not getting to the quarterback a lot. And I just think against a quarterback like this, you have to fix that, or you could be in for a long day.
All right, so it looks like advantages for both offenses. Quick note on special teams. You asked Rizzi this week, Luke, about kickoff returns and how we have seen an uptick in around the NFL in returns actually being made, fewer touchbacks, and then also in some long returns. We saw Taysom Hill have a long one for the Saints last game. Obviously, that Cowboys game, Kevontae Turpin returns one for a touchdown. Darren Rizzi is usually right when he predicts these things about special teams, and he's been right again.
Yeah, and he's been kind of on the record all season long saying he expects the return numbers to spike in late November, early December when the games get colder. It's a little bit harder to kick the ball through the end zone if you want to, although Phil Galliano kind of shot that down earlier this week when he said kickers are good enough, they can do it anywhere. It's we'll see. We'll see, in Lambeau.
New York next week, too.
New York next week. But, yeah, I think the new rules have been, for the most part, hitting the desired marks. I don't think it's been too easy for the return team to pick up touchdowns. I think there's 5 return touchdowns this year, which is like the season total mark for, I think, 20 and 21. But it's a big increase from the last 2 years. The field position's up a little bit. I think scoring's up. Teams are getting more field goals out of this stuff, like less punts. So it's hitting the desired mark without there being like 20 return touchdowns this year. I'm interested to see how the Saints continue to do that. They've really shuffled their return groups since Rashid Shaheed's injury. Jermaine Jackson handled it for a few weeks. They waived him. He's on the practice squad now. We've had Taysom Hill back there, Jamal Williams, Dante Pettis has returned some punts. Kind of curious to see how that shapes up because I think that's going to turn into a roster spot for somebody. I mean, some of those guys are still on the practice squad. They're going to run out of elevations for him. I think Dante Pettis has one more, right? So it'll be interesting. I think it's going to kind of cause them to have to shape some things out in the last couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah. You're watching the Saints Insider Podcast. It's brought to you by Bank Plus. I encourage you to subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Hit the like button for us if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. 5-star review is always appreciated. We appreciate each and every one of you. We're going to take our last break here and come back with keys to the game and our predictions for Rams versus Saints. Welcome back to the Saints Insider. Gearing up towards prediction time for Rams versus Saints. First, we're going to do our keys to the game. Rod, if you had to boil it down to one thing to get the Saints their 3rd straight win, what would it be?
I think they're going to have to get some turnovers this week. I know Tuesday I said 8, I guess, over the last 6 games. They need to get some starting this week because I just think this Rams offense is really explosive, and I think at some point they're going to have to get some stops and get some short field positions and maybe jump on them early. And, maybe that'll help them get a win. Yeah,
you're not getting a lot of 3-and-outs against this offense, so that would certainly help. Luke?
We kind of referenced it earlier in the show, but they got to keep Derek Carr upright because I think this Rams offense is going to score points against the Saints defense, and I think it's going to be incumbent on the Saints offense to at least keep pace. And it's going to be really, really hard to do that if they're in disadvantageous down and distances, or they have drives killed by sacks. Yeah, Darren Rizzi brought it up this week that a number of those opportunities where the Saints had chances last year against the Rams to go put together a scoring drive, they're in plus territory. They had drives killed by sacks. They've done a good job this year. Derek Carr's been sacked 7 times in 8 games, but this Rams defense, if they do one thing well, it's to get after the passer. Got a lot of sacks this season. I think they're number 3 in the NFL in pressures, according to NFL Pro. So that can't be a huge factor in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's why running the ball would be mine, just for Kamara to be heavily featured, to keep the Rams off the field. Time of possession, I think, is going to be really important in this one. And I think the Eagles did provide a little bit of a blueprint as special of a player as Saquon Barkley is. So I think Alvin's going to need a really big game.
And I'll do the inverse of yours, Luke. They got to get after Stafford. I mean, all jokes aside about Chase Young, he is pretty high up there in pressure rate. He's got to finish some of those. Stafford's not a mobile guy. Get him down, create some negative plays, and maybe that creates turnovers too. So those are our keys to the game. Time for predictions here on the Saints Insider. 3:05 p.m. game on Sunday. The Rams are in town. Saints have been home for a whole month. They do have some advantages, and that's why I won't make too much fun of Jeff Duncan's pick, other than the fact that every time he picks the Saints every week, and he picks the Saints by 1 point every week. So 28-27 is his pick.
Classic.
I really would have laughed if he had stuck with 17-16, which he's picked like 5 times already this year. But he did up the score to 28-27 Saints. So he has the Saints getting their 3rd straight, getting to 5-7, and getting back in the playoff race. What say you, Rod?
Well, when I was thinking about this, I see there's a scenario where the Saints could win. I see another scenario where the Rams could actually win in a blowout if they really get rolling. But I went with 24-20 Rams. I just feel like, and again, I'm assuming Erik McCoy is not playing. If he's not playing, I think that kind of makes it a little different. But I just think the Rams' offense is going to be a little too much for this Saints secondary. So 24-20 Rams.
If McCoy somehow plays, do you change your pick?
As we sat here today.
Putting you on the spot.
No, as we sat here today, I was like, nah, I think Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are just going to be a low for this Saints secondary. I mean, again, we saw what Jameis did against this team, and this Rams team is a lot better than the Browns team was.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Saints have a lot of advantages. I mentioned they have a huge rest advantage, travel advantage here, all that kind of stuff you look at. A game they could win, but ultimately when I think about how bad, even in wins, how bad the Saints defense has been against a very good offense, I can't see it. I have 30-21 Rams. Luke?
I think the Rams are going to go 1-0 this week. Yeah, I have 30-27 Rams. And it's same thing.
I think you had 30-26.
Did I?
Yeah, I think you had
30-26.
That's what we have.
Rams offense is too good against a defense that I think has been very disappointing this year. We'd have to see something completely different, new out of this defense for me to really feel comfortable picking the Saints in this game. And I just don't think, with all the firepower the Saints are missing offensively, I know they've been very good the last couple of weeks, but like they just have like a pretty tough task this week. If they can get Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill going again, there's a path there for them to win the game. I do really like what Rizzi has done as interim, and I think he's got them focused this week. We're going to have to see something that we haven't seen.
Right.
That 30-27 versus 30-26 is important, by the way. Three
because
point spread.
That's the spread. Yeah, which is probably just mentally I went there, but only one of us so far under. Right?
Only one of us under, yeah.
Right.
Over-under's 49.5, so need to stay in the 40s. And I don't think Matt Parrish is going under.
No. I had 33-28, which I think was the score of the Detroit game last year. And I kind of have a feeling that this is going to be like that. I don't think the Saints offense is going to struggle as nearly as much as they did against Detroit, but I could see the Rams get out to a big lead early. It seems like we're headed for a blowout. And then the Saints do their Saints thing where they just kind of come back.
It's like the Rams game
make
last
it
year,
closer,
too.
more make it a little uncomfortable on deadline.
I'm writing
for
the
us.
game story, man. Come on, don't do that to me.
And then it's like one of those games that's closer than it seems. Kind of like the Chiefs game.
Yeah.
Dennis Allen was here, I would be very confident in that. But I just, I also think, I think that's kind of the game we're headed for.
If the Saints win this game, are you picking against them anymore this season other than at Lambeau, you think?
I'd pick the Commanders still.
Washington and then
plus you
at Tampa Bay
hit
is.
the bell.
Yeah.
I just think Jaden
Tampa.
that wasn't really. I covered Washington. That's just Jaden Daniels is like everything this team struggles against. So
Yeah, that's
I still
fair.
pick Washington.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet. I don't think I'm like, if the Saints can win this, they're not losing again territory. But I do think, like, if they win this game, everything's wide open. Darren Rizzi being the permanent coach, playoffs. I mean, we can talk. It's all those doors are back open if they can win this game.
Yep.
Not saying they're going to walk through them, but the doors are back open.
We'll see.
So we will see.
We'll
3:05 on
see.
Sunday is kickoff. We will have a post-game show for you on the SaintsOnNOLA.com YouTube channel. Subscribe to that channel. Click the bell for notifications so that you know when we go live, usually about 20 minutes after the game. These guys will all join me from the locker room, live there from the Superdome. So we will see you then. Until then, our producer is Norman Bell. For Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, and Matthew Paris, I'm Zach Ewing. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you Sunday.
Rams 1-0.